Hello. If you're looking for the Expand Your Emotional Vocabulary webinar, you've come to the right place. So I'm Carla Pascoe, and I am going to be your host for this webinar, and we'll be talking for probably the next 45 minutes or so will be the length of the webinar. And I want to welcome everyone, and thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule. I know that we all have such busy and hectic lives these days, and I appreciate you taking the time, and especially taking time to invest in yourself and to hopefully enhance some of your emotional intelligence and skills and tips that you can use to get you to the next level. So, having recently completed my certification as a trainer with the Jack Canfield organization, it's really important to me to share success principles and strategies to help people achieve a more fulfilled life. So today we're going to talk about how we can expand our emotional vocabulary. And this is all related to emotional intelligence. You know, as we know, emotions are just innately part of our human nature. You know, they drive learning, decisions that we make day to day, creativity, relationships, and our health. You know, essentially, emotions play a leading role in every moment of our lives and are the components of outcomes that we choose and that we make every day. Although we all have feelings and emotions, being able to accurately express them so that other people can understand where we're coming from and how we feel about things, that's the hard part. You know, we all have emotions and have them on display, but really when we need to be able to accurately describe and impart those feelings to other people, that's the part that takes a little bit more work. So that's what we're going to talk about today. You know, if we don't express our emotions, and especially if we don't express them in a reflective way that is precise to how we're actually feeling, you know, it can lead to resentment, frustration, and in general, just a lack of healthy communication. And that can also impact our relationships in our professional life as well as our personal life. So, like I said, for about the next 45 minutes, we're going to talk about this topic. And my main goal is to give you some tools that can help you more effectively communicate with the people in your lives so that you can sustain those healthy and happy relationships that are built on honest and respectful foundations. So, thanks again for joining me and taking the time to invest in yourself. I always like to start with my why and my reason for doing any of the training and coaching that I do. And these are my three goofballs, my family. And for me, it's important to be more present in the moment and enjoy my time with my family. From an emotional intelligence perspective, I certainly want to be able to role model that for my daughters. I want to have a more fulfilled life and have stronger relationships with my family, my friends, as well as, you know, colleagues that I work with professionally. And then as a success coach and a trainer, you know, really sharing these principles and strategies that can help people, and doing that with passion and purpose is really important to me. So from a professional perspective, you know, I've always been told that I do a really good job with communication and being able to understand other people's perspective and where they're coming from emotionally. In my personal life, you know, I don't find it as easy sometimes. And I'm going to tell you, especially with two teenage daughters, that has certainly tested every fiber of my emotional intelligence being. Even just a few days ago, one of those girls in the picture and I had a little falling out over communication, and I'll share some examples of that later. But I'm just here to tell you that expanding our emotional vocabulary and enhancing our emotional quotient, it's a process. And we can all strive to continue to evolve in that. So it really is a journey. And I know that because you're here, that's an interest that you have as well. So let's get into the meat of the content. So emotional intelligence, this term, it may be new to some of you. It's really used in the world of industrial and organizational psychology to describe those people who are really good at communicating competently with other people. Emotional intelligence has become kind of this buzzword because corporations are realizing how important a trait it is for people, especially those in leadership roles. I read an article recently. Travis Bradbury is one of the co-authors of Emotional Intelligence 2.0. And in the studies that they conducted for that book, they were talking about during the selection process for a new hire, if two candidates seem to have about the same, comparison as far as experience, seem to be about the same as far as intelligence, and but those who seem to display within the process a higher emotional intelligence and a self-awareness, as they describe, is really the one that has the edge and is more likely to get the job. And I find that really, very fascinating, having been in leadership and management roles for a long time and picking out those ideal candidates. But they say that really that emotional intelligence edge is definitely going to help people during the job search and for promotional opportunities as well. Emotional intelligence is important for solving complex social problems, resolving disputes, negotiating deals, and it's a crucial element to navigating any personal or professional relationship that involves communication. And I can't think of anything that we encounter or do in our lives that does not involve communication. So our emotional intelligence is what helps us explore daily social interactions with an understanding of others and how we behave around them. So it all starts with that self-awareness. If you want to be an effective leader, a better parent, a more loving partner, or just a better team player, then learning how to use your words and thoughts and get those across in a better way, then your goal should be to increase your emotional intelligence. If that's what you would like to do, then increasing your emotional intelligence is going to be one of the things that gets you there. So emotional intelligence, as we know, can be referred to as EQ for emotional quotient, as opposed to IQ for intelligence, or just EI. So you'll hear it referred to a lot of different ways in the literature. Another one of the things that I actually just read an article last night that was talking about the comparison for leaders and the marriage between emotional intelligence and mindset. And I thought that was really fascinating. I've never seen the two compared, but really with emotional intelligence, that all starts with self-awareness, being aware of your own emotions, then being able to control those, and then being able to understand and pick up on other people's feelings as well. So really, emotional intelligence is our ability to identify and manage our own emotions first and foremost. And it can be described with three skills. The first one is emotional awareness or self-awareness, as I was just discussing. And then number two is the ability to harness emotions and apply them to tasks for thinking and problem solving. And then number three is the ability to manage emotions, which includes regulating your own emotions, but then also being able to impact the emotions of other people, whether it's cheering them up, calming down a situation that may occur at work or within a social setting. So it's really being able to first control your emotions, but then influence others as well. With high emotional intelligence, your close relationships are going to benefit. You're going to gain the ability to read people's feelings easier. And perhaps more importantly, you're going to learn how to identify and regulate your own emotions first. So if you think about where you are on a scale of 1 to 10 for emotional intelligence, and I'm not going to ask you to put in the chat what that is, but think about it. If 1 is really like a the poorest communicator you can imagine, and someone that is totally not aware of their own feelings and can't communicate those well or pick up on anyone else's feelings in a situation. And that's a 1. And 10 is really the best communicator you've seen, someone that is very aware of their feelings at all times, able to control their feelings based on a situation, and then also be able to understand and pick up on the feelings of other people in a situation and not let them that influence them emotionally, but they express empathy. So if that's a 10, just think about where you are, because what I would like for you to take a look at is a week from now, a month from now, 3 months from now, whatever that number is now. If you feel like you're a 6 or a 7, are you being able to expand that by applying some of the things that we're going to talk about? So let's talk about growing our emotional vocabulary. So if you have emotions that are unlabeled, it's easy for those to go misunderstood. And if we're feeling emotions that we're not conveying appropriately, or other people are not picking up on them as we would like for them to, that can lead to irrational choices, counterproductive behavior, just definitely some adverse outcomes that we're not hoping for. We all know how it feels to really be upset, and you may not be able to pinpoint it, and you're just so upset you can't even put your words together. And if you are feeling that way and you're not able to unpack it yourself, then we can't expect other people to figure it out for us. So that's how we're going to talk about how you can better describe how you're feeling and start to articulate that to people that you need to in any given situation. So people with high emotional intelligence, they master their emotions because they understand them. And they use words that are going to really describe them to others in a way that's very specific. And then that in turn is going to help others respond more appropriately when they understand what you're trying to convey. Now, you may not get the exact, result that you want from someone else, but you're going to get a lot closer if you're able to really pinpoint and define how you're feeling, why you're feeling it, and what it is that you need from the other person. So, for example, people may say, I'm just in a bad mood, and they don't even know why. But emotionally intelligent people are able to pinpoint whether they feel frustrated, disappointed, anxious, irritable. So you get the drift. They're really able to really narrow that large emotion down to more specifics. So throughout this class, I'm going to give you some replacement words that you can use for some common emotions that we all feel. And they're going to act as a way for you to more specifically describe your current emotional state to people. So take notes and list some of the things that are definitely words that you want to be able to recall and to start incorporating in your communication with people. And I think you'll see over time that it will start to make a difference. So let's start with a common emotion that we've all experienced, which is fear. So instead of saying, I'm afraid, I'm scared, I'm fearful, use this list that we're going to talk about to see if you can more accurately convey the emotion that you're really feeling. One thing that Jack Canfield talks about in his teachings and his success principles is that, when we are experiencing fear, it's usually because we're imagining an outcome that hasn't happened. So it's really something that we're creating in our head. But there are times that you can really be fearful, but many times it's more these words that's describing what's going on. So one is scared. When you're scared, you're frightened or terrified of a situation. If you're anxious, it may be that you're overwhelmed or just worried. Insecure is another one that can cause fear, and that's when you're feeling inadequate or inferior. Submissive. When you feel in a submissive state, you can feel, worthless or insignificant. Rejected. When you feel rejected, you feel alienated, inadequate, kind of pushed aside. Humiliated is another one. And when we feel disrespected or ridiculed is when it causes that humiliation, which may come across or feel like a fear. So I hope you're beginning to see that as you kind of break the words down a bit, there are a lot more words that can describe the emotion of fear. Let's talk about disgust. When you feel grossed out or uncomfortable about something, or even just a general uneasiness, here are some words that may better describe that. It could be disapproving. You're feeling very judgmental or even loathing about something. It may just be disappointment, disappointed, revolted. You may feel awful about a situation, detestable, revulsion, or avoidant. That can be an aversion or a hesitance in a situation. Sad is the big one. And this is a very common emotion, and we all have days that we just feel blue or blah, and we don't really know why. So I'm going to go through some words that may lead to this feeling of sadness, or you just feel blue. And it may help you really distinguish what's going on a little bit better. So when we feel guilty, we may feel remorseful or even ashamed about something, and that can lead to a sad or blah feeling. When we're abandoned, if we've been ignored or victimized about something, despair. When you have feelings of despair, it's a very vulnerable state, and you feel powerless. So depressed. When you feel empty inside, you definitely can have a depressed feeling that really leads to that sadness. But it's a little more descriptive than just being sad. Lonely is another one, when you feel abandoned or isolated. And then even when you're bored, you feel apathetic or just indifferent. So being able to better pinpoint the exact feeling or thought that you're having, is really one step closer to how you're going to learn to deal with those feelings. So let's kind of go the other end of the spectrum and talk about something a little more cheery. So instead of saying, I feel happy, to describe how you feel about something or how someone makes you feel, here are some other alternatives that you might come up with. It might be that you're optimistic and you feel inspired and open about something. You may feel intimate and playful or sensitive. Peaceful. When we feel at peace, we have this hopeful, loving feeling. When you feel powerful, that can make you happy because you may feel provocative or courageous. When we feel accepted, I think that's always going to bring about a feeling of fulfillment and being respected. When we're proud, it's a feeling of importance and confidence that we might have that can lead to that happy feeling. Interested. When we're interested in something, we may be inquisitive about it. We may be amused about it. And then the last descriptor is joyful. When we feel joyful, it can just be an ecstatic feeling, or liberated. So you can see that there are a lot more words that can describe happy than just I feel good or I feel happy. I'm actually going to be doing a webinar in August on the science behind happiness and a lot of the research that's gone on, and then conducting a Facebook happiness challenge in August. So stay tuned for that. If you're on my mailing list, you'll get emails about it. But with a lot of the research that's been done, there may be some surprises to what you think as far as happiness and how it relates to success. So let's go back and talk about another one of those big, heavy feelings, and that's anger. When we get hurt, it's so easy to lash out. We've all been there. Like I was telling you earlier, I did it just a few days ago with my daughter. And so I find this list helpful to really break down, why I lashed out and what I was feeling at the time. And this list can be helpful for when you have to go back and make amends and make it right. and apologize for that. So hopefully this list will help you as well so that you know kind of why you're acting in a way that's uncharacteristic for you. So it may be because you're hurt, embarrassed, and devastated. Another one is when you're threatened, you feel insecure and jealous. Hateful, when you're resentful or you feel violated, you may lash out. You can just be mad, like just furious and enraged about something. Aggressive is when you're provoked or you feel hostile towards someone. Frustrated is the big one. You're infuriated and just irritated. Distant can be that you're withdrawn or you're suspicious of someone's behavior and it's causing this underlying anger. Critical is the last one. And that's, when we're critical, it's usually because we're very skeptical and are being sarcastic. So, for example, here's one way that these words might be used in a work situation. I'm sorry if I was short with you yesterday at work. I was feeling insecure after our meeting with the supervisor because I feel like my work is just not up to par. So that's going to tell the person that you lashed out at, kind of what was underlying that led to that, but you're still apologizing for the behavior. What I had to use with my daughter the other day was, I said, I apologize for snapping at you. I just become really irritated when I perceive you're being disrespectful. And so we were able to then talk through what was frustrating her and what behavior I perceived to be disrespectful. So that list can be very helpful, especially if you find that you've acted in anger and you need to make amends. So surprise is another emotion or feeling. And, surprise can be good or bad. So we're going to talk about a couple examples of both of those because we all come across surprises in our life. So it could just be that you're excited, you're eager, you're energetic, and in a good way, or you're amazed and awe of something and completely astonished. Confused might be a little, you're perplexed or disillusioned, and you're not sure if it's a good thing or a bad thing. And then startled, you're completely dismayed and shocked, and maybe startled in not such a good way. So those are some of the main categories that I wanted to give you some additional words that you can use and better define what's behind your emotion. But let's talk now about if you're a parent or you work with children or you have nieces and nephews or grandkids, this can really be something that you help build on for them. Expanding your emotional vocabulary is going to help you communicate effectively with those around you and keep our relationships healthy. But it's a crucial building block for kids as well. And having kids that are socially competent and really able to describe their feelings. So, parents provide the basic words to kids to describe their emotions like mad, sad, happy, scared, or angry. And that's good for little kids. But as they start growing, you need to help them, just like we went over those list of other words, to better describe what's going on with them, because it's going to help you as a parent to deal with the emotion that they're having if you understand it better. So, one piece of advice might be to sit down with your younger children and create an emotions chart. And depending on their age, you can use stickers. Obviously, emojis are popular now, and you can talk about that emoji and what it looks like and what we think they're feeling. And that gives you a way to refer back to that for kids when they are upset, to really be able to pinpoint that a little bit more for you. And then as they get older, you're not going to need that chart as much, but they're going to have a more developed vocabulary. So it's great if you can start that practice early, but it's never too late to help our kids better describe their feelings. Kids are like sponges, and they just pick up on everything that we do as parents, which is sometimes good, sometimes not so great. And I'm even going to, in full disclosure, share a couple of examples. But, we want them to better be able to define and label their feelings, and that has to start with us. So, giving them a wide range of words to define how they're feeling will help them learn and grow as they get older and be better equipped than maybe we were when, we were their age. So, when we're frustrated with the computer and it keeps freezing, and, rather than cursing at it or throwing the computer across the room, explaining what it is you're frustrated about, saying, I am so frustrated this keeps happening. And I'm worried that I won't be able to get my work done in time if I can't get it fixed. Well, that gives everyone around you and those little ears that are listening to everything that you do an understanding of why it's important to you that the computer stopped freezing. And I can tell you, my oldest, when she was 2, I was drying her off, and I hope this won't offend anyone. I'm going to use the swear word, but I was drying her off after I got her out of the bath, and we dropped the towel, and she goes, "Oh shit!" And I was so shocked. I mean, I was just speechless for a second, and then I said, "What did you say?" And she said, "Oh shit, that's what you say when you drop something." And I said, "Well, that's probably not the best word to use. Maybe you could say, 'Oh shoot, I dropped that,' or 'Oh, oops, I dropped it.'" And she said, "Well, Mom, maybe if you and Dad didn't use that word, I wouldn't know that word." And I was like, okay, good point. And that certainly shut me up for a little bit. And just realizing that not only do they pick up on things that we may not want them to say or repeat, they understand the meaning of it. So we have the opportunity to replace those words with positive words or better descriptors for their feelings. And allowing kids to own their feelings and their thoughts is really important. I remember trying to explain to my 8-year-old that she was having some difficulty with a friend at school. And she was, saying, "Well, I was right, blah, 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 blah." And I said, you might want to just think about it from her perspective, and she may have a different perception of the situation that happened. And she was like, "What is perception?" So I explained that to her. And then lo and behold, the next day she was using it in a sentence. And her and her sister both had the same French teacher. And my oldest was saying, "Oh, I love my French teacher. She's so nice." And my youngest was like, "Oh, I can't stand her. She's so mean to our class and she yells at us." And I said, "Oh, well, that's interesting. Emma said that she was really nice." And she goes, "Mom, it is my perception that she is not nice, and I don't like her, and I'm entitled to my perception." And so it was true. And I mean, it's really interesting today when she disagrees with somebody's opinion about something, she reminds us of her perception. So it's just important that we give kids the tools that they need to be better equipped to define those big emotions that they have in life. So the first step in building our own emotional intelligence, like we were talking about, is coming to terms with your own emotional um, spectrum and really understanding that your feelings are valid. And to practice this acceptance, you know, take a pause a couple times throughout the day to think, okay, how am I feeling now? What emotions am I feeling? And just think of it as a brief meditation. It can be 20, 30 seconds of reflection. And it's just a self-acceptance and allowing you that space to pause and think about how you're feeling. And eventually, this can become habit if you do it regularly, and it'll be second nature. But you'll be able to better understand your train of thought throughout the day and what's affecting your emotions that you're having, which therefore is going to impact your behavior throughout the day. One thing, Jack Canfield does this exercise for people that kind of feel stuck emotionally, but they're not sure why. And it's really powerful. Obviously, in a webinar setting, we can't do this, but I just want to briefly describe it to you. And then if anybody, wants to explore this further, certainly reach out to me because it is really a powerful exercise. So when you're feeling stuck about something or just you feel like you have this block, and taking time to stop and think about what are the emotions you're feeling. And then in naming those emotions, then he has you pause and describe where you're feeling different in your body, where you might be feeling, whether it's a heaviness or um, a discomfort. And it's really interesting when you do that, then he has you really describe, very specific what that feeling is. And as you do that, he wants you to go back to when you first remember feeling that feeling. And he said in general, it's going to take people back to ages between 5 and 8. And then your current self, your current age, what would you say to that 6-year-old that was experiencing that feeling? And then for you at the age you are now, what would your 85-year-old self say to you to help you through that? So it was very interesting in releasing those feelings and that baggage that we might be carrying around and we don't even know. And for me, when I went through this, I was feeling a little stuck. I thought I should be further along with progress on something than I was. And so I was really upset with myself about it. And when I was learning this exercise as part of my certification, I did it myself. And it definitely took me back to a time when I was like 6 years old, nothing traumatic or, really explosive. But it was a time when I felt a little insecure and anxious about what was going to happen. And just that my foundation was a little shaky at the time because of my mother's illness. And so that's not a time I think about. I don't consciously ever think about when I felt that way. But I did realize that the feelings that had surfaced when I felt stuck was really the same feeling I felt then. So it's very powerful. And what our emotions do and how they show up in our body is also, it's very interesting. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. And I love this quote or this saying that nothing blooms year round. And that's so true. So we have to really, give ourselves a break and cut ourselves some slack. And don't judge yourself when you feel crummy. It's okay not to feel happy all the time. In fact, it's really healthy. And guess what? It's just normal. Even though sometimes, you look at people around you and you think, oh my gosh, they feel great all the time. I promise you that's not the reality, that they're going through their own waves of emotions and turmoil just like you. So don't dismiss your feelings before you've had a chance to really think things through. If you're feeling a certain way and if you're having a time when you just feel crummy, just stop and think about what's impacting that feeling. What maybe happened today or a year ago or a long time ago that might be triggering that feeling that you're having. And just remember, it's okay to feel bad sometimes. Now, one thing we can do is our own DIY pseudo psychoanalysis. It's important to start to find connections between your feelings and the things that are happening when they come up. Now, one way you can start to assess your current emotional state and just take note of what's going on in your mind. You might jot it down in a journal, a notepad on your smartphone, or if you've got a really good memory, you can just make a mental note of it. Or you can also enlist a friend to help you. Sometimes just saying how you feel out loud can really help you analyze that feeling and make a connection for what's causing that discomfort. For example, if you find yourself holding back tears, in a meeting at work after a coworker said something that normally wouldn't have any impact on you, think about that list of descriptors that we went through for those emotions and think back about what was happening and what triggered the emotion, and what is the specific emotion. And then what you want to do is, whether your emotional state is reflective of current or not, and you think, gosh, I don't even know how that would have upset me, then you might have to dig a little deeper, like we were saying, and think, when have I felt this way before, and what in this situation may have brought that to the surface? So making connections with our feelings and thoughts, it's so important. When you feel kind of an unusual emotion creep in, it's useful to ask, what do I think about this? What's going on? And recognize that you're experiencing an emotion for a reason. If you're analyzing and assessing your emotions, and you start consciously doing that, it's very normal for contradicting thoughts to kind of pop in our head. And in psychology, they refer to this as cognitive dissonance. And in academia, that's a stage that may happen right before you have a paradigm shift. And when your perspective about something is about to change, or you learn something new. And if that happens, just run with it and grow your understanding. And this will help expand your emotional intelligence. So I'm going to give you an exercise that's pretty simple for everyone to do. Let me take a drink of water. Is the news. I think most people watch the news, but what I'm going to ask you to do is try to watch the news or listen to a program on NPR is probably the best. That's a nonpartisan news station, or certainly one that doesn't have as many editorial opinions. So try to find one as nonpartisan as you can, which is certainly a challenge these days. But as you're listening to the stories or the news that's being presented, think about how that is making you feel and what emotions it's stirring with you. And then listen to each of those thoughts and feelings as if you were witnessing it in a courtroom. And pay attention to every thought and argument that might come to mind, even if it doesn't fit your normal perspective of how you would feel about the story that's being portrayed. And this exercise really will help you better understand and navigate through the emotions of others as they express their feelings to you. You might not feel the same way or have the same perspective, but taking that time to really learn how to understand and accept the feelings of others as valid, that's really crucial to increasing your own emotional intelligence. And the other side of this that I want to point out is being aware of how the news impacts us emotionally. I know I can be guilty of, watching the news and, like hanging on every story. And then I find myself stressed and I feel knotted up, and it's just not a good feeling. So I have to try to limit myself from watching the news too much. But whatever we discuss, watch on TV, read about, or think about, in those last 45 minutes of the day is what is played over in our subconscious while we sleep. So those last 45 minutes, it is so important and a great opportunity to really infuse something more positive, because it's going to impact our emotional state as well. So think about that. And I know that I've had to try to adjust some of that, because if the last 45 minutes of your day is what's played over in your head when you sleep, that may not be a pretty picture. And that's not what you want your subconscious focusing on. So let's talk about the mind-body connection. Obviously that's huge. Your body is going to give you clues to your unconscious feelings. We get that knot in our stomach when we're nervous or stressed. We may experience butterflies when we're around somebody that we have that romantic interest for. Sometimes we can feel a lump in our throat when we feel like we're about to cry and burst into tears over something. So, our body is a great way to gauge how we're feeling. So, even if you don't know for sure what feeling you're having, pay attention to those physical cues, and they're legitimate indicators of emotions that are behind it. And it's really trying to bring your attention to feelings that your brain wants you to address. So, next time you feel an unfamiliar or uncomfortable sensation in your body, just pause. Take a moment and really assess, how am I feeling emotionally at this moment? And there's almost always a connection. And the more that you can be in tune to your body's response to things will also help you be more aware of those emotional things that crop up, hopefully before it affects your body. Now, another thing that's important is really being able to process our emotions because they can overwhelm us. And one way to do that is to really move through uncomfortable feelings is to address them head on by writing them down. That may not seem like much, and you think, what's that going to do? But it really is an incredible way to get your feelings from the inside out. And just the very act of writing thoughts on a paper really take that pressure off your psyche and can relieve any physical discomfort that you're having. When you're feeling overwhelmed, even just jotting phrases, words, it doesn't have to be full sentences. It doesn't have to be a big, long journal entry. It's really just getting out what you're feeling at the moment when you're too overwhelmed to kind of decipher what it is. And, doesn't have to be even legible to anybody but you, but just that act of writing it down. Trust me, I think you'll be really surprised if you start doing this, how efficiently you can begin to assess how you're feeling and how much it's going to relieve those feelings that you need to get out. It's going to help you kind of name and claim those emotions. Because if you write some feelings down when you're overwhelmed and then you go back to look at those, at the end of the day or a few days later, you'll see that you probably wrote down more than you were able to verbally articulate. So give it a try. Let's talk about empathy. These days it can be easy to be in our own opinion bubble or our own echo chamber. If we only get news and opinions from people that are like-minded and share that same perspective as we do, we really miss out on learning about the viewpoints of others. When we block out or ignore the way others feel, we're missing out on being able to practice empathy. And this also limits us from actively working to understand the perspective of others. And that's so important if you want to have healthier relationships and be a better communicator. Those with high EQ, or emotional intelligence, really use their empathy to listen to many different viewpoints, and they do it without judgment. And then they make decisions that make the most sense for the situation. They do it without succumbing to emotionally charged arguments. So think about it as diplomacy. And if you've had the opportunity to witness this with individuals, people that you respect, or whether it's mentors that you've worked with or bosses that you've had, and you see them navigate a difficult emotional situation, diffuse the situation, take into consideration everybody's viewpoint without becoming emotionally engaged in that, and then move through to make a great decision, that's somebody that has a high emotional EQ. So to build your empathy muscle, think about the things that you feel really strongly about. And then ask yourself why. Why do you feel that way? And being able to start understanding the root of your own emotions and passions is really essential to breaking down why you react to things the way that you do. So to be more accepting and emotionally literate, you're going to have to shift the way that you think as well as the way you perceive things. And that's probably going to cause some discomfort. To get started, try this exercise. Think of a topic, and I'm just going to throw one out here, but do this on your own with a topic that's important to you, but veganism. If you think about that and you think, I just don't understand the big deal, and when I hear, a staunch vegan talking, it annoys me. But explore those feelings further. Make a list of what are those qualities that are associated with veganism. Do some research on it. Research famous people that are vegans. You'd probably be surprised. Somebody that's your favorite actor or the singer that you love the most, could be vegan, and you start to change your perception a little bit. And read a thought piece on it so that you know what that opposing opinion is and how you can begin to see that side as well. So work that example through something that you feel really strongly about. And we've really come to the end of the content for today. So I hope that you can take away some of the things that are suggestions or exercises or even the descriptor words and begin to use those to build your emotional intelligence. And think about what is one thing that you're going to do starting today to boost your emotional intelligence. I've enjoyed our time, and I hope that you feel like it's been worthwhile and that you will begin to be more self-aware of your emotions and be able to be more perceptive of others as well, and that you see that translated into more success in your life. Thanks again for your time. I appreciate it, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you.